Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amit Harari, and coming up in today's newscast. Pro and anti-judicial reform demonstrations taking place over the weekend, both with tens of thousands of participants. Meantime, Jewish American Heritage Month in the United States beginning in the U.S., calling all Americans to learn more about heritage and contributions of Jewish Americans. And later, the Israeli delegation for Eurovision flying to Liverpool ahead of the contest starts. Jerusalem and Tel Aviv aren't silent. Tens of thousands of Israelis gathered in Jerusalem on Thursday evening for a mass rally in support of the government's legislation plans. As the anti-reform protests going on for many weeks now took place on Saturday evening, and both parties aren't planning to stop anytime soon.
למעלה משני מיליון ישראלים יצאו לפני כחצי שנה והצביעו במשאל העם האמיתי, הבחירות. הם הצביעו בעד רפורמה משפטית.
As part of ongoing pro- and anti-reform protests, tens of thousands of Israelis demonstrated in Jerusalem on Thursday to show support for the planned judicial reform. This is the second pro-reform demonstration held in Jerusalem. The first took place about a month ago on the evening Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced a halt in legislation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu commented, saying, "I am deeply moved by the tremendous support of the national camp that came to Jerusalem tonight in masses. All of us 64 mandates that brought the win are first-class citizens. You warmed my heart, and I thank each and every one of you."
The message is that Am Israel is Chai and Kayam, and no one has the right to tell our government what to do or to interfere in our internal affairs of the country. We have a prime minister.
So we are here to say there is only one Am, one Hashem. We love everyone, and we want just the best. According to the Torah and the mitzvot, we love you. You're our brothers, and we love you.
Justice Minister Yariv Levin said the 2 million Israelis who voted for the current government voted in favor of judicial reform and vowed to make a meaningful correction in the current situation. And just 2 days later, on Saturday night, tens of thousands of Israelis took to the streets protesting against the planned judicial reform for the 17th week in a row. This week's protest is seen of higher significance since it's held 2 days ahead of the opening of the Knesset summer session and 2 days after the largest pro-reform demonstration in Jerusalem. And every protester, either on the pro or anti side, has their own agenda.
So I'm here to demonstrate with my husband, my 2 kids, because Israel is changing, and the democracy we have today and the economic thriving we have today is thanks to what it is right now. There is equal opportunities for everyone, for men, for women, and if things will happen as the government can change it right now, this will not be the case. And I want my kids to have a good future here.
And with us now to elaborate on the whole situation is Jerusalem Post political correspondent Alia Brewer. Alia, the Knesset is now back from its Passover recess. Mass protests were held in the past days, both for and opposed to judicial reform. Talks on the issue are still underway at the President's house. Is judicial reform even on the agenda right now?
So it is on the agenda, but mostly behind the scenes. Especially in the coming month, the Knesset will focus mostly on passing the national budget, which needs to pass by the end of May. So it's definitely on the agenda, but kind of on a low intensity and kind of in the background.
And some are saying that the pro-reform protest was a show of strength, sort of, for Justice Minister Yariv Levin and kind of a power play to push Prime Minister Netanyahu to support his proposals with or without agreement with the opposition. Do you buy it? How do you see it?
I actually think that the protest was more of a power play to bring agreement back onto the table, because the Likud has been bleeding mandates and it's come to a point where the opposition has scored such a big victory that it's almost not worth it for them to reach an agreement anymore. And they might try to angle towards toppling the government and taking over. So I think the demonstration, more than anything, was trying to get back to an even footing where an agreement can be reached.
And pro-reform protests, I mean, this was the second big one that we saw. Where is this going? I mean, what are they talking about? The organizers, I mean, in that side of the map, sort of, where is that going?
So there aren't any more large-scale pro-reform protests scheduled in the coming week. The anti-reform protesters already announced that this Thursday they'll be having a large protest day. But we should expect to see in the next few weeks at least one or two more big pro-reform rallies as well. I think with each side kind of trying to gain leverage ahead of the issue heating up again after the budget passes.
Yes, now coming back from recess, everything starts running again. The reports that the coalition wants to remove Yesh Atid from the talks because they don't really want an agreement. Are the compromise talks doomed to failure?
So I spoke to someone from Yesh Atid today. Yesh Atid says that they're, just as invested in reaching a compromise as the Likud is, and that from their perspective, what the Likud is trying to do is to drive a wedge between them and national unity, Machaneh Mamlechti, to try to split up the opposition. I think both sides are very cautious, but also cautiously optimistic about the good intentions at the talks. It's too early to say whether or not what agreement will come out of the president's residence, but we can fairly say now that I think the talks are advancing and it seems to be going slightly better than what a lot of people expected.
And speaking of a Machaneh Mamlechti that you just mentioned, Benny Gantz in recent weeks became sort of like this pillar of sort of like hope or someone that will compromise between everything. What is his future, do you see, in the Knesset in the near future?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question right now. I think, some would say that, Benny Gantz, he's gotten more mandates than Likud in recent polls. And some would say that, he's the next Israeli leader. He's learned his political lessons over the past few years, and, he's the next big name after Netanyahu. Others would say that, this is kind of a hot air balloon, where a lot of people are, not happy with the way the Likud has handled the government in the past few months, but that when this calms down and the government moves to issues that aren't the judicial overhaul, Gantz will start bleeding mandates back to the Likud. So it remains to be seen. I think that it's definitely interesting to see how Gantz's moderate approach has kind of brought him more popularity, and I would expect that both Lapid to his left and Netanyahu to his right will intentionally try to strike a more moderate tone and to try to get back some of the mandates they lost to him.
We definitely will have to wait and see now. The Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, Tzachi Hanegbi, he says there will be no White House invitation from Joe Biden until the issue of judicial reform is resolved. That could take some time. I mean, is that a problem?
Yeah, that could be a problem. I mean, I think that's part of a larger question about Israel-U.S. relations. But it's definitely an issue, and Biden bluntly said that as long as democracy was under attack, he wasn't planning on having Netanyahu come over anytime soon. So I think it's in the Prime Minister's interest to get this over with as soon as possible. And the question is, how quickly can he get off the tree that he climbed on? I think that's kind of the question that it's still unclear.
Eliav, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.